Turning now to the war in Ukraine, day 34. There it is on your screen. National Report will take you live to the ground in Kyiv. Contributor Michael Grimm joining us live there. He has the latest. Michael.
Good morning. It's been fairly quiet here in the center of Kyiv, but off to the north, it has been consistent and regular heavy shelling, heavy artillery. So although the Russians have said they have backed off of Kyiv, certainly within the 10 to 15 kilometer radius, I would agree with that. But off to the north, probably further than that, very extensive, what I would call heavy artillery, consistent and regular throughout the morning, at least for the last 2 hours. This is among reports that the Russian army is consolidating along the eastern corridor, especially in that Donbass area near Donetsk. They seem to be consolidating there and regrouping their forces. And then in the south, it appears they've pretty much control of Mariupol. There's 2, maybe 3 small villages where Ukrainians are still fighting and holding their ground. But for the most part, Russia has most of control of Mariupol. And it looks like they're going to move into Kherson and strengthen up that area and consolidate. And we don't know where they'll go from there, but sources on the ground are thinking that they're going to hold at Kherson and Mariupol and not go into Odessa yet and see where the talks take us. But that's right now. None of that is confirmed. These are sources on the ground that are giving us live updates as they come in.
Yeah, Michael, really quickly, there are reports that these they have drastically reduced an assault around Kyiv and Chernihiv in terms of Russian forces. But what is it exactly that Putin wants? It appears to be that the reports say he wants the Donbas region, and the fighting still persists at this time. Is that accurate? Is that maybe a part of this deal that they're trying to work out, potentially annexing the Donbas region?
Well, obviously, it's impossible to get inside Putin's head, but I would argue that it's not just the Donbas region. Yes, there's no question that Russia wants the Donbas region because they've been fighting there since 2014 when they came in through the Crimea. They have been fighting in the Donbas, and to some extent, that's been a bit of Russia's downfall. Because there's been fighting for 8 years, Ukrainians have been preparing for 8 years. So their soldiers are more seasoned from going to the Donbass to fight. Now, why is the Donbass important? Well, one of the reasons is that when it was the Soviet Union, that the Donetsk area, specifically in the Donbass region, was the largest producer of coal. So energy source that obviously Putin would want. That's a very valuable source. But I would argue that he also wants Mariupol. Why? Mariupol on the Azov Sea would give him land corridors, logistic corridors to the Crimea that he doesn't have now. So access to the Black Sea as well, if he wants to stay with Kherson, would also make sense. So access to the Black Sea along the south, as well as that corridor going up east, which is that Donbass region, and specifically the energy in Donetsk area, would make sense to me, but we're going to have to see what Putin really wants.
The Pentagon will speak in about an hour and a half on this, and we'll bring it to you, or any results from it. Michael Grimm, live on the ground in Kyiv. Michael, thank you.
Joining us now is Texas Congressman Jodey Arrington. Congressman, thank you so much for coming on National Report today as the war enters day 34. I'd like to share with you this map. It showcases Russia's attacks across Ukraine along with some troop locations. If we could pull that up. Essentially, Congressman, these Russian forces do continue on. However, news today of the peace talks, perhaps they would be backing off of the capital city. What does that tell you about the state of the war?
It tells me that the Russian people and certainly Vladimir Putin have underestimated the fight of the Ukrainians and what they will risk for their freedom and independence. It also tells me that as we say in Texas, Vladimir Putin is more hat than he is cattle when it comes to putting an army on the field. So I think it also means that the coalescence of the NATO allies and the sanctions are starting to put pressure, even though it's been late and somewhat weak and feckless on the front end by our president. I think we're starting to see some of the effects. So I think those are positive signs. I do not underestimate Vladimir Putin, his tremendous pride that's at stake now that he is in this mess. And so we've got to keep the pressure on. And unfortunately, President Biden introduced a budget that yet again shows weakness and will embolden our adversaries from Vladimir Putin to Xi Jinping and others, because he effectively cuts our defense budget. He effectively cuts our security budget along the border. 4% increase with an 8% inflation is a cut. And it's discouraging and demoralizing to our troops, and it sends the wrong message to the world.
I want to get to the budget more in depth in a moment, but first, let me show you this Hart Research NBC News poll. Kind of gives you a sense of where Americans stand right now. 83% saying they are concerned that the cost of goods and services will increase as a result of the Russia-Ukraine war. 82% concerned that war will involve nuclear weapons here. 74% concerned the U.S. will send troops to fight in Ukraine. Congressman, if you've been watching the president's trip to Brussels and then to Poland, what he said during that trip has had to be corrected by the White House on a number of instances. His administration has had to walk back some of the statements or offer clarifications to it. Does that offer some sort of assurance to the American public who now share these concerns about how this war could impact them here at home?
No, it looks like they're having to walk around behind the president to clean up his messes and misstatements. But I would tell you, I think the president was right. He should have just let his comments stand, and the White House should have let him stand. Vladimir Putin should not be in power. He's a tyrant. And we're either going to pay a little now or we're going to pay a whole lot later. We are the leader of the free world. This is an affront on democracy and freedom-loving people everywhere. And so I think we do have a responsibility not to send our sons and daughters, but to provide the support and the lethal aid necessary for the Ukrainians to defend their freedom and independence. So I think the president should continue to make those statements without his handlers coming around apologizing for him, because they're so used to a posture of appeasement in every other dynamic around the world that that's the only play they know to run. But no, the president was right in saying that, and he should stick to that message that was from the heart, I believe.
They did walk that back. He clarified he was expressing the moral outrage that he felt, and he made no apologies for it. However, articulating a policy change, not a regime change. That was sort of the distinction that was offered yesterday. You mentioned the budget. Let's talk about it. $5.8 trillion for 2023. You tweeted this out saying, with all due respect, Mr. President, we don't need more federal spending. We just need you to stop weaponizing our government against energy producers who have provided Americans with affordable, clean, and secure energy. This ties into some higher gas prices that Americans are seeing. Sir, quite frankly, we've heard President Biden blame Putin for higher gas prices. We know that those prices had been going up prior to the invasion of Ukraine here. But what can be done to bring down these costs?
Well, I think the biggest thing that the president could do is stop the whole of government assault on oil and gas. That's the lifeblood of our economy. It is what gives us energy independence. And his budget doubles down on the relentless attack on the fossil fuel industry. And it's a $45 billion tax in addition to the regulations coming out of FERC and SEC and every other agency in this administration, in addition to the moratorium on drilling and the cancellation of pipelines. I mean, taken together, the more you tax and regulate something, the less you get of it. The less you get of something, the more it costs. So you're going to see a double down on the taxing and regulating and the increase in cost at the pump, which is already unsustainable for working Americans. Sure. At 80%, at an 80% increase.
Yeah, it costs you a lot to fill up your tank these days, and that impacts Americans across the political aisle. Congressman Jodey Arrington joining us this morning. Thank you, sir. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Emma.
Thanks.